Factoring type 2 trinomials, part 2. Okay, this is a giant number. We're going to start off by multiplying the 7 and the 28 together. Let's see, 7 times 28 is a very large 196. So let's do factors of 196. 1 times 196. I don't think it's going to be that. I'm trying to make a 53. So it's going to be 2 times 98. Four times 49. And you know what? I'm not going to go any further. You can actually go through and find all of them, but 449 adds up to 53. So I'm going to stop there. And they do multiply out to be 196. So since I found the factors that I'm going to need, I'm going to go ahead and bring down the 7a squared. And instead of 53a, I'm going to write them down with a 4 and a 49 because they both have to be positive to add up to a positive 53. So positive 4a plus 49a, and then bring down the positive 28. I'm going to group the first two terms together. I'm going to group the second two terms together. The 7a squared and the 4a both have an a in common. When I factor it out, it's going to leave behind a 7a plus 4. When I bring down the plus sign, I'm going to look at the 49a and the 28. I can tell that they both have a 7 in common. And when I factor the 7 out of 49a, it's going to leave behind a 7a. When I factor the 7 out of 28, it's going to leave behind a plus 4. Not a surprise, because remember, when you do factoring by grouping, those parentheses factors are supposed to match. Because now I'm going to look at the two terms I have, and I'm going to say they both have a 7a plus 4 in common. I'm going to open up the leftover parentheses. When I factor the 7a plus 4 out of the first term, it's going to leave an a behind. When I factor the 7a plus 4 out of the second term, it's going to leave behind that plus 7. That's another reason that sign is so important. And you're done. Let's go on to number 9. And again, have your calculator handy, or some of them you might know. 15 times negative 6 is negative 90. So factors of 90 are going to be 1 and 90, 2 and 45, 3 and 30. And I'm looking at it thinking, oh, I'm trying to make a negative 27. I could keep going, but I've actually already found it. See, I could go all the way down to 9 times 10. As soon as I see that, hey, I can make a negative 27 out of that. Make this one positive, make that one 30, and they actually add up to negative 27n. That's the goal after all. Now bring down the first piece, 15n squared. Instead of negative 27n, you're going to use these two numbers that you found, plus 3n minus 30n minus 6. We're going to group them, first two together, second two together. The first two terms look like they have a 3n in common, so I'll take that out as my greatest common factor on the first two terms. When I factor it out, I'm left with a 5n plus 1. Bring the negative down. 30n and 6 both have a 6 in common. When I factor that negative 6 out of these two terms in my second group, I am left with 5n plus 1 also. And again, if you happen to get the signs wrong, just really quick, multiply back together again. Negative 6 times 5n is negative 30n. And negative 6 times 1 is negative 6. After you feel better about it, now look at it, you're down to two terms. These two terms have a 5n plus 1 in common, which when I factor that factor out of the first term, I'm left with a 3n. When I factor the 5n plus 1 out of the second term, I'm left with a negative 6. And I'm done. Let's get one more done. When I multiply 4 times negative 25, I end up with negative 100. Factors of 100 are 1 and 100, 2 and 50, 4 and 25, 5 and 20, and I'm going to stop because I'm looking at the number I'm trying to make is a negative 15. 5 and 20 I can turn into a negative 15 if the 5 is positive and the negative is on the 20. They add up to a negative 15 n, and they still multiply out to be a negative 100. That's how you find the two factors you need. Now bring down the first term, 4n squared. The negative 15n you're going to rewrite using these two numbers you just found, plus 5n minus 20n, and then bring down the last term. And now it's just factoring by grouping over and over again. We're going to group the first two together. We're going to group the second two together. My first two terms both happen to have an n in common. I'm going to factor the n out of the first group. It's going to leave behind a 4n plus 5. And again, remember, pause the video anytime you need to if you want to see if you can do it by yourself. Bring down the negative between the two groups. That's very important. Then 20n and 25 have a 5 in common. When I factor the negative 5 out of the second group, it's going to leave behind a 4n plus 5, or you can copy it over and verify it. Negative 5 times 4n is negative 20n, and negative 5 times 5 is negative 25. Now I'm down to two pieces. Those two pieces have a 4n plus 5 in common. When I factor it out of the first term, it's going to leave behind an n. When I factor it out of the second term, it's going to leave behind a negative 5. All right, I'll see you in the next video.